Hi everyone, my name's Scott. Welcome to Planes, Trains, Everything, and welcome to Malpensa Airport just outside of Milan. This isn't actually Malpensa Airport. I'm staying at an airport property. It's about a 5-minute drive from the terminal. Why am I here? Well, back in 1975, I was really young at the time. Back in 1975, I took my first ever flight, and it was from Sydney to Singapore with Singapore Airlines. And I was smitten with that airline. Return flight back to Sydney was fantastic as well. In those days, Singapore Airlines had a really good reputation, as they still do have, and their slogan was Singapore Airlines, the airline other airlines talk about. Okay, they might have slipped down the ladder a little bit against Etihad and Emirates and these sort of airlines, but they're still one of the top airlines. Now, to travel on Singapore Airlines from the UK, a bit tricky, because you can fly to Singapore, and that's not a cheap place to fly to if you just want to travel on an airline. Until I rediscovered the fact that they had fifth freedom rights between Milan, Malpensa and Barcelona. Now, a fifth freedom flight. Imagine you've got a flight starting in Italy and a flight ending in Spain. Generally speaking, it has to be an Italian airline or a Spanish airline that flies between the two. You know, the EU kind of messes things up a bit, but generally speaking, that's the rule. If you're from a third country, for example, Singapore, you generally aren't allowed to fly between those two countries, unless you have fifth freedom rights. And Singapore Airlines have fifth freedom on that route. The reason why is because if they try to operate separate flights between Singapore and Milan and back, and Singapore and Barcelona and back, there wouldn't be enough traffic to justify both flights. But by combining the two, suddenly it makes sense. That was actually explained to me a few years ago by an airline sales manager. Not for Singapore Airlines, it was another carrier, but we're talking about fifth freedom flights because I think they had one. And he explained that's why they do it, and it makes total sense. So tomorrow at 20 minutes past 7, I'm going to be traveling on Singapore Airlines between Malpensa and Barcelona, and I cannot wait. I've missed Singapore Airlines so much, I just cannot wait. This is the whole reason why I'm in Italy, just for this little 1.5 hour flight. And I'm taking you guys along with me as well. It does mean getting up at the crack of dawn, 4:30 for a 5 AM shuttle bus to the airport, but it'll be worth it. So I'll see you in the morning. I was staying at the Idea Hotel, which is fantastic. It's about a kilometre from the airport itself. But yeah, it ticks all the boxes, and they have a shuttle service to and from Malpensa Airport. It's €5 each way, but hey, you can't walk. Okay, Terminal 1 at Malpensa Airport. This flight we're catching is an Airbus A350-900, just in case you're interested. And the fare is £98 one way. You might think that's crazy when you think you can get a low-cost flight between Milan and Barcelona for about £15 or £20. Yes, but it's not Singapore Airlines then, is it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get through security, going to have a breakfast, and I'll see you along the way. I'm actually curious to see how this works, travelling from a Schengen country to a Schengen country with a non-Schengen carrier. I just had to go through passport control even though I'm not leaving the EU. Which means that when I get to Barcelona, will I have an entry stamp again? Maybe. Boy, it's confusing. I'm also very curious to see how many people actually use this flight. I can't imagine there's going to be a lot, but you never know.
on. Before we take off, stow your luggage under the seat in front of you or in the overhead compartments. Make sure that your seat belt is securely fastened till you hear a click. Tighten it by pulling on the strap. To unfasten, lift the metal flap. We recommend keeping your seat belt fastened throughout the flight. Whenever the seat belt sign is turned on, infants should be lifted from the bassinet and if there is a change in cabin pressure, an oxygen mask will automatically drop in front of you. Pull the mask down sharply. Place it over your not fully inflate. If you can't reach the seat in front of you, lower your head and lean forward as far as you by pulling the red tabs or blowing into the mouthpiece.
From now.
Welcome to Barcelona. What did I think of Singapore Airlines? Well, they were the first ever airline I travelled on, and I thought maybe that's why I liked them so much and why I had a soft spot for them, because they were the first ever. But no, they are a great airline, one of the world's great airlines. The level of service on board, indescribable. There was quite a few staff for the number of passengers we had. The seat I sat in, I had not one, not two, but 3 staff members come over and ask me, did I want to move because that seat didn't recline? And I said, well, it's only for an hour, I'll stay where I am. I picked that seat particularly because it was on the starboard side and I wanted to get some shots for you guys of the Alps and the Mediterranean coast. But the flight was just over an hour long, and they still managed to get kind of a lunch. So that was Swiss taking off. The flight arrived something like 25 minutes late. By the time we got into Barcelona, we were about an hour late, and that's because we missed our slots, air traffic control and whatever. But thoroughly enjoyable. For the length of the journey, £98, maybe not worth it, but for the experience, definitely. I would travel on Singapore Airlines again. I was also curious to see what happens with formalities. When I got to Malpensa, they stamped my passport with an exit stamp, so you have to leave the European Union just to travel on Singapore Airlines, and when you get to Barcelona you re-enter the European Union again. All very messy. There were 16 passengers who travelled on that little leg. Only myself and one other person seemed to have the same boarding pass as me, which indicated we're travelling within the Schengen zone, but we still had to go through formalities at Barcelona anyway. I think the others must have been connecting onto other Star Alliance carriers. Anyway guys, thanks very much for coming along with me on this exciting journey. Oh boy, I really enjoyed that. I'll see you next time.